Hey ladies, today we are going to talk about functions. We are going to look at them in terms of words, equations, tables, and graphs. Oh my. So go ahead and get out your notes and let's just take a few notes down. Please remember that a function is a relation in which each number in the domain, so every x value, is paired with exactly one number in the range. That's how we define functions in mathematics. You've actually been working with functions a lot, you just haven't known their name. So what we are going to do today with functions is identify them. We are going to create tables of functions, discover rules that exist between them, turn those rules into equations, and then graph the equations. We're going to tie it all together. So pause if you need to write anything down, but otherwise let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's remember that a function is basically like an input-output machine. So something goes in for x, there's a cool rule that is applied to it, and out comes y. Let's go ahead and create a function table. Let's say that we have a rule where I know that half of x plus 2 gives us y. Just kind of using words and symbols to describe a rule. Half of x plus 2 gives us y. So where do we start? We start by putting in values for x. That's typically where we will always start. So let's just pick a value. Let's say 10. Okay, let's apply the rule now. So in goes 10 into our machine. Now I need to take half of it and add 2. So half of 10 is 5 plus 2 is 7. So here's the rule. And out pops 7. I now have an ordered pair 10, 7, which could be graphed. We can apply the rule again to another value of x. Let's say we choose 11. Well, what's half of 11? We can figure that out. Half of 10 was 5, so half of 11 is 5.5. 5.5 plus 2 is 7.5. So let's go ahead and get that down. You can write 7.5 or 7.5, and I now have another ordered pair. How can I write this rule as an equation? Because that's a trickier part. I'm using two variables now. Well, your equation is always going to start with what it is you're trying to get, what your output happens to equal. So it's always output equals something with the input. So you're always doing something to that input to get the output. And that's the basic formula we are going to follow. Now typically we are going to be using x and y, but you can use any two variables. I'm just going to stick with x and y because on our graph it's easier to see the x and y coordinates, x and y axes and all that jazz. So how could we write an equation for this rule? Well, I know my output is y. Ooh, something erased. I know my output is y. So what am I doing with x? Well, I'm taking half of it and then I'm adding 2. So how can I write that down? There are a couple of ways. You could do 1/2 times x plus 2, or we could write it x divided by 2 plus 2. Either way, we would have an equation that's accurate and that demonstrates the rule that we are applying in this particular function. Let's go ahead and practice using our handouts. So what I would like you to do now is to grab page 32. On page 32, let's take a look at number 1, because I think the hardest thing is not applying the rule or writing the rule in words or even creating a table. It's actually translating that rule into an equation. That is the tougher part, using those two variables. So that's what I'd like to practice. So on page 32, number 1, when we take a look at that, it says a phone call costs $3 a minute. So hopefully you're not calling from your cell phone or your home phone. Maybe you're overseas or maybe it's a collect call. So $3 a minute. Let's just go ahead and write that down. We are given a table. We are told that the input is represented by x and that the output is represented by y. Now that's all well and good, but if I'm talking about phone calls and minutes and money, I kind of want to know what the X and Y represent in this case. So you always want to make sure you can identify that. So what is input? Well, if it's $3 a minute, I'm probably calculating how much a phone call is going to cost me. So that would be my end result, which means I need to know the number of minutes that I'm on the phone. So it would make sense that the number of minutes will represent X because that's what I need to determine the total cost of the phone call. So total cost is Y. Please write that down, highlight those, star those, box those. You know, we need to make logical sense of the situation. You don't want to just get stuck in the land of X's and Y's and not know what to do. So we're talking about minutes and total cost. So we are given some minutes. We're given 1 minute, 5, 10, and 20 minutes. What about the output? Well, we're not given the output and we're not given the rule. We have to figure that out. Well, let's just logically fill out the table. If a phone call is $3 a minute and I talk for 1 minute, that's going to cost me $3. If I talk for 5 minutes, what am I going to do? Well, 5 times 3, right? So that would give me $15. 10 minutes would be 10 times 3, that's $30. And 20 minutes times 3 would give us $60. That's pretty expensive for 20 minutes. So now that we've kind of logically worked through it, we can figure out what it was we were doing to get from X to Y. So what were we doing? And that's going to be our rule. And we're going to write the rule as an equation using X's and Y's. So basically, we were multiplying our number of minutes by 3 to get the total cost. So our total cost was calculated, that's why I'm using the equal sign, was calculated by taking 3 and multiplying it by the number of minutes. If you can use words and symbols to describe rules at first, it will be a lot easier to figure out like what's going on, and then you can substitute in your X's and your Y's, because then we can go, oh yeah, total cost, that's Y. I have my 3. Number of minutes, that's being represented by X. Now, if you can immediately jump to Y equals 3X, that's great. You can go ahead and do that. But if you need to think a little bit more about it, write these things down. So let's go up in the top of the table and write Y equals 3X, because that is our function rule. Now, we are also asked to list the domain and range. So let's make sure that we do follow through with those directions. Remember, the domain is the set of all X values. So let's use our brackets and let's choose our X values here. So for number of minutes, I'm talking about 1, 5, 10, and 20. Okay. For our range, we're talking about the set of Y values. Using brackets again, we have 3, 15, 30, and 60. Always look at your domain and range, even if you don't write them down before you graph something, because you want to know what it is you're supposed to be counting by on your X and Y axes. If you had drawn your little X and Y axes and you started on the Y axis just counting by ones, you might quickly realize that you're not going to get up to 60. So domain and range are a great tool to look at when analyzing what your scales should look like on the X and Y axes. Okay, let's go ahead and practice another rule. In fact, I'm going to have you practice this one on your own. So please pause the video and work on number 2. Again, focusing on what your output is going to be and then how you can write the rule using an equation. So hit pause and hit unpause when you're ready to see the solution. Okay, so here we're talking about Jared. He has 4 less than 3 times the number of trophies that Zach has. This is a little bit tricky because it has that less than in it. You need to make sure you did not start with 4 minus something. Okay, if I have 4 less than 3 times the number of trophies that Zach has, I'm going to be subtracting 4. So first of all, let's just figure out what we're trying to get in terms of input and output. What represents what? And if you've already done this, again, feel free to fast forward just a little bit. But if you need to go through it step by step, here we are. So I'm trying to figure out whose number of trophies. That's important to figure out. I'm trying to figure out Jared's number of trophies. because it says Jared has blah, 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 blah compared to Zach. So in order to figure out how many trophies Jared actually has, I need to know the number of trophies that Zach has. So that would be the first most important step. Then when you fill out the table, you should have gotten these numbers. Let me just plop them down here. And again, if you didn't, let's go through it. So what does this mean? Well, here, if Zach has 2 trophies, and I know that Jared has 4 less than 3 times the numbers of trophies that Zach has, I'm going to take 2, I'm going to multiply it by 3, and then I'm going to subtract 4. That's how I'm figuring out the number of trophies that Jared happens to have. 2 times 3 is 6, 6 minus 4 is 2, voila. So with the next one, let's say Zach has 4 trophies. 4 times 3 is 12, minus 4 is 8, 6 times 3 is 18, minus 4 is 14. Or if Zach has 8 trophies, 8 times 3 is 24, minus 4, and that gives us 20. So these are the calculations we are applying. What are we doing? We're taking Zach's number, x, multiplying it by 3, and then subtracting 4. And what is that equaling? That's equaling y. Now you could write 3x minus 4 equals y. That technically, means the same thing. They're both equal, but we usually see the y written on the left-hand side. So since it doesn't really matter where you put the y, let's just put it on the left, since that's where you'll typically see it. So Jared's number of trophies is equal to 3 times Zach's trophies minus 4. Alrighty, let's go ahead and try another one. I would like you to do number 4. So hit pause, work on number 4, and then hit unpause when you're ready to look at the solution. Okay, with number 4, the rule should look something like this. Y is equal to half x plus 4, or you could have written it y equals x divided by 2 plus 4. With your output, you should get 14, 17, 19, and 25. I did not list the domain and range for number 2. I apologize for that. For number 4, the domain is 20, 26, 30, and 42. And for the range, we are talking 14, 17, 19, and 25. We will practice more with functions, and we'll actually graph them in class tomorrow. So I will see you then. Thanks. Bye. Hi, I forgot that there is one more piece. Please make sure that you go to your Google Drive, you create a new document, that you title it y equals 4x, and that you describe what y equals 4x could mean. I have this written out in terms of what you need to do underneath this video on my Moodle page. So please go to those directions and then proceed to Google Docs and complete your entrance ticket. Thank you. Bye.